Well, Ontario's $110 billion pension plan for its municipal workers has tapped former real estate head Blake Hutcheson as its new CEO. He's already been a key management figure as the plan's president for the past 2 years. His expertise is in line with the fund's ongoing push towards private assets, including real estate, infrastructure, and alternative investing. I spoke to him about his long-term goals for the organization ahead of officially taking over in a few months' time.
OMERS has had a pretty great run. The last 3, 5, 10 years, we've averaged north of 8%, so fairly high bar. Humbling to step in and take over the role after that sort of story, but what an opportunity. And the strategy that we have for 2025 has actually been part of my responsibility for the last year, so we're going to hit the ground running. We're not pivoting. We're keeping on strategy with where we as an organization want to go. And the story looks sort of like this. We're a $110 billion plan, roughly today. Will be a $200 billion plan sometime between 7 to 10 years. You know, let's put a stake in the ground, maybe 8. And so when you think about that growth, everything emanates from there. And then you have to say, break it down in terms of what regions we want to go to, where we see the growth, where we see the opportunities. And so from an investment standpoint, $110 to $200 billion, very exciting times, very important you get it right as you roll out your geographic story. And we've spent the last 2 or 3 years really, I think, setting ourselves up in a material way for success. We've got offices in London, offices in New York, offices in Singapore, really effective operating companies in infrastructure, private equity, growth equity, real estate, and otherwise. So we're well positioned to embark upon the next 5 to 10 year story.
It has been a growth story, and like doubling growth, and you're describing that again. With that comes complexity of personnel, of region, is the footprint you have now the footprint you need for that additional growth ahead?
What got anybody here won't get you to where you need to be in the future. Tons of unknowns, geopolitical unknowns as we witness in the paper every day, historic interest rates, an aberration in history, $1.5 trillion of capital out there chasing the same things most pension plans in the world are chasing. So there are tailwinds, there are headwinds, lots of headwinds, lots of uncertainty. And so the question is, are you positioned to compete? And I would put our team up against any to compete, but we're not naive as to the challenges. There will be significant challenges getting this right, given the growth that we have and the complexity of the global environment.
The job number one, with all of kind of the glamour and asset picking and the asset base grows, is liabilities that you have to match with a base, preserving capital, commitment to members that stretches out over time.
Correct.
How, just snapshot of how you feel about that, of what any worries you have in out years about matching up properly?
Well, I'll say a few things. The Canadian pension plans are the envy of the world in so many ways, in that it's been made okay to own platforms and buy and scale companies, giving us tremendous competitive advantage. It's been made okay to put teams together and pay them properly to compete with the best of the best. And so we are well positioned, I think by any measure, to compete. And that's the big question, is when you sit here today and look at it, how can you compete? And it all starts with your liabilities. And as a plan today, we are close to fully funded, depending on what discount rate you use, which is comforting. But the headwinds, again, when you look forward at demographics and you look at the future workforce, we're not naive as to the challenges ahead. But I would put our story right up there when you are close to fully funded, when you have had a lot of success competing with the best in the world. When I look at the team we have today, when I look at the scale of the opportunity we have today, I'm optimistic, and we will remain optimistic, and we will do what it takes. I've learned one thing about liabilities of pension plans. They don't care what happens to interest rates. They don't care what's happening in the political world. They know they need to be paid. So failure's not an option. We will find a way to ensure that the 500,000 people who are the members of our plan are looked after over time.
There were years of adjustment on assumptions, right? Where we kept thinking, well, normal will return at some point, and now you stare down the barrel of negative, never mind normal. Have we adjusted all the way to where we need to be? Is the thinking where it needs to be for the long term?
Nothing is static. So as we sit here today, again, remain optimistic, given the time and place and the team we have in place. And now we got to execute, and that's our job. That's what we're paid to do. Yeah.
When you do look at the headwinds, the risks around the world, geopolitical obviously feels like something that would be very present.
Yeah.
How do you factor it in, though? Because the markets sometimes get these massive geopolitical risks, like a potential war in Iran, and the market is fairly sanguine.
So, in recent years, we used to have a government relations team that was based here in Toronto, focused on Ontario, focused on Canada. Today, we've scaled really thoughtful people in the UK, in Singapore, in Australia, in the US, and in Canada. So as an integrated member of our team, in every region in which we choose to invest, we have really thoughtful geopolitical people that put their lens over the decisions we take. And increasingly that is a necessary and responsible component for somebody like an OMERS. And so that's the first point. I would say, you know, in the short term, you can't speculate on outcomes. We're not in the business of sort of saying this person will be elected or this person will be taken out for whatever reason, or somebody may drop a bomb. You just have to have a portfolio and a plan that sees through cycles, and none of us want to react to today's news or tomorrow's news. And the best defense against geopolitics and everything else is a formidable strategy that you stick to with the best assets that you can aggregate, and those have an ability to see through cycles. And then the noise that whatever happens geopolitically, you kind of factor into the mix.